We know that people are saving later or leave it for later to start saving and building some sort of investment balance. Is it too late to start saving in your late 30s or even going to your 40s? Or is there hope, and can one actually spend the time and try and build a plan?
So I think the first thing is that for majority of people, your prime earning years only really start in your 40s or into your 40s. So I think whether you are building a business yourself, whether you work for a company, you have a salary, the majority of people, their careers from an economic perspective really get going in their 40s. So I think the answer to the question is no, it's not too late. Obviously, you would want to start much earlier. And the reason is that it gives you a little bit more of a margin for safety. We've spoken about the compounding effects of time. So if you start earlier, that's great. You start earlier, your money can grow for longer. It can grow much larger in terms of your savings and your wealth. But it's definitely not too late. A lot of people, the reason they haven't saved into their 40s is because they have been, doing the kind of things that is involved in building a family. It's not all holidays and fancy cars. Like often it's about, buying a family home. It's about putting your young kids through schooling, etc. So like you said, a lot of people find themselves in their 40s. They find out that their savings for retirement, are not where they should be, but it's not like they've been reckless. And what that does mean is that if that's the case, if you've just been spending on building a family, building a life, you probably are in the position where not only is it your higher earning years, but you do have the ability to, put aside an appropriate amount of money. And then the question is, how do you do that? Which I think we're going to unpack a little bit, because that's important.
There's this growing trend of online influencers, and obviously in financial services, call them finfluencers. A lot of people are following them. What guidance would you give to anyone that's following an influencer and taking that advice? Is there anything that they can do, or is that actually the right way to go?
So I think there's a bigger conversation. So I think the first thing is that it's quite exciting in the times that we live, because firstly, from an investing perspective, you're able to do a lot yourself, which wasn't always the case. Historically, it was hard to invest yourself. You didn't have access to digital platforms where you could invest on a self-directed basis, etc. So, I think the point you're making talks to the fact that firstly, you can invest yourself. So a lot of people out there, if they get a certain element of advice, guidance, etc., are able to act on it. That's the first piece. I think second piece is, social media has just meant that the access to information from a whole range of sources is just much greater. So I think that, some information you'll get out in the markets from a social media perspective is quite useful. It's useful from a personal finance perspective. It can teach you how to think about things, etc. And that, I think, is very important. You're more likely to stick to your plan. You're more likely to save if you understand it. If you understand the lingo, I mean, the financial markets there's a lot of jargon. But anything that starts smelling like a get-rich-quick scheme, is probably something that you want to necessarily avoid. So yes, you do need advice, you do need guidance. We all want to become more educated. We want to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. So you do need to look at, trusted sources, right incentives, etc. So it's good that there's more out there, but you do now have to be more selective. So yes, there is a risk that you can be led astray by the wrong type of advice, again, for your specific needs. And it's always about what is your specific needs.
Right. So obviously from educational access to information, there's value there.
It can be very useful.
But obviously, if you're trying to build a plan, especially given the late stage you're starting, consult with somebody that's qualified, experienced financial advisor to help guide you through that journey.
And maybe just one thing to add. I think many people are attracted to those get-rich-quick schemes because they do feel like, desperate, that they started too late, they're way behind, etc. And I think that's why this conversation is so important, to say you're not far behind. You don't have to swing for the fences. If you have a nice plan, you stick to it, you're disciplined, that's perfectly fine. That'll get you there.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So someone that's already in the late 30s or early 40s and they're getting quite anxious about building this plan, what are some of the top things that one needs to have as part of the plan? Even call it the top 3 things, if you like.
So I think you got to start with the big things first. Like, you got to get the big decisions right. The little decisions only make sense in the context of the big decisions. And what are the big decisions? So you need a plan that's going to allow you to save appropriately and invest those savings for your needs. And those needs there's different types of needs you need to deal with. So on the one hand, you do need to think about emergency savings. So you do need to think about, if you had to lose your job, if you couldn't earn an income for a short period of time, do you have enough savings just to tide you over? You don't want to dip into your long-term investments if you have some kind of short-term blip. So the first piece is emergency savings. And you would typically want to invest those funds in a very low risk manner. That's going to be a savings account and the likes. The second piece obviously is around saving for your lifestyle over the rest of your life. And for most people, that means retirement. So it's the piece around, okay, I am going to stop working at a certain point in time. How do I necessarily save and invest appropriately to get there? And, for people then that have ticked the first two boxes, then there's a piece around, okay, if I've dealt with short-term blips, I've dealt with the rest of my life, what else is important to me? And that typically is, we talk about legacy and things like that. But the first two boxes are the most important piece, especially if you're starting at 40. I suppose the third piece to bring into the equation is both of those pieces are part of a plan which says, I'm going to continue to work for the foreseeable future. And if I save, I'm going to effectively solve for those needs. You do need to think about what happens if something unexpected happens, and not, like I said, a short-term blip in the road. You lose your job, it takes you 3 months to get a new one. But what happens, if you're not able to earn any more permanently? For many people, it's about we talk about income replacement. If you're not earning income anymore, your family needs a certain element of money, liquidity at that point in time. But it also could be, if you get a rare type of cancer and you need a treatment that is not done in South Africa and it's not covered by local medical aid, do you have the funds available to effectively travel overseas to go get that kind of treatment? If you're unfortunately disabled and your house needs to be redesigned to cater for that, you maybe need some kind of permanent help. Do you have the funds available? So your plan is typically based upon you living a relatively healthy life, retiring at a normal age, and then having a normal retirement. This is really to cater for those eventualities if something happens that takes you outside of that. It even could be that if something happens to you and there's, taxes due on the wealth you've bought up before it can be passed to your family, you can use life cover to cover that off. So I think it is the most important thing is that these two pieces have to be brought together. And that's often where a financial advisor comes in. A good financial advisor is able to look at the picture together with you as a whole and say, what are your needs? How do you get there? What could go wrong? And are you able to still, meet those needs if something does go wrong?
So there's a number of things to consider, but ultimately to answer our question is it's not too late, but it's important to actually seek guidance and cover all your bases from an investing perspective all the way through to your life cover and insurances.
Most definitely. And again, I think I'd reiterate, the world we live in today, to invest on what we call a self-directed basis, where you're able to do it yourself, is very, very easy. And that's great when you're 20, 25, 30, etc. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to build the discipline. When you hit 40, if you are behind, it is really good to sit with a professional who can give you some element of guidance. You may still effectively go and do it yourself, but getting that guidance is really important. So not only the plan, I would very strongly advise that you sit with a professional who can just help you make sure that you cover off all the bases.
Thank you, Darren. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the good news. It's never too late as long as you start
Definitely
now.
not.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tabisa.
Cheers.